So, well, room 111, like the Celtic, we never stop, and the games are coming fast. So after the European exploits tomorrow, we're back to the Saints this weekend, and we'll get direct to the M8 to Livingston. As always, I am delighted to have Euan Rankine from the TalkLivi podcast on to help me get the scoop on Livingston. Well, Euan, how do you feel, pal?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me back on. It's last time I spoke to you, we were still carrying on a bit of an unbeaten run against Celtic, but sadly that came to an end the last time we played you, and I think that was probably the point where all Celtic fans realised they were going to win the league, was when they finally got over the Tony Mack hoodoo. So, but no, all good. We've had a pretty solid start to the season so far, so all in good spirits. In comparison to probably this time last year when I spoke to you before we played you at Livvy, we were 1 point on the board. So yeah, much better place so far this season.
Good, mate, good. Right, as per, because it's the first time we're talking this season, we'll have a wee gander back at last season. Shouldn't take us too long, we'll fly through it, we'll just kind of, you can pick up on the usual stuff. So, David Martindale, who'd taken over the season before, takes his place back in the dugout, and it was his first pre-season with the club as manager. The League Cup was first, wins over Brecon, defeat to Alloa, a 6-5 penalty win over Wraith Rovers after a 0-0. And you finished off with a 3-1 win over Cowdenbeath. Meant that Livingston finished in second place behind Wraith Rovers with 8 points and qualified for the knockouts. Drawn St Mirren at home would have given some hope for progression, and a 1-each draw. Livingston would then go on to win 4-3 on pens again. So Ibrox and Rangers were up next. Comfortable 2-0 win for the hosts, saw the cup finish for another season. Not a great start league-wise, like you said. 5 games without a win, 4 losses, 1 draw, but Dundee and Livvy were sitting flat bottom. And the next guests were Celtic, and sure enough, a 1-0 win. Right, so it was a long time ago now. What was your thoughts on Livingston at that point? Because, I mean, it's easy for me to kind of fall back into the whole what was Celtic doing, but yous were absolutely fair for your win, as I remember it. It gave you the kick in the arse that kind of propelled you on to have a decent season. I wouldn't go and say it was a great season, but at that point, what was your thoughts at that point, if you can remember?
Yeah, Davey had a very tough kind of pre-season last year, in that the thing that happens at Livingston almost every season is you have a big turnover in your squad. Mm-hmm. And last year was probably the biggest turnover we had in terms of important players moving on as well. We had the likes of John Guthrie moving on, Marvin Bartley retired. We'd lost Dykes earlier that season as well. That's so right. We had a massive turnover. Scott Robinson moved on as well, who had played a big part during the campaign. Mm-hmm. So we had about 15, 16 players come in the door and the same leave. So you're trying to get quality, but also quantity, which is a very difficult thing to manage. To get up kind of 15 signings bang on is always going to be very difficult. And I think there was an evident shift in our style of play as well. We kind of changed system to playing a 4-3-3 more often.
Yeah.
And the League Cup group, we dragged ourselves through that. I think it's the most we've struggled with injuries since Davey's been involved with the club. And I think we had a load of issues with COVID, which was the first time it had really hit us during pre-season. So our start to the season was kind of hampered a lot by probably Davey not being able to put his best 11 out in the park week on week, just because of a load of problems. And we had a stinking start in terms of fixtures. I think we had 5 of the top 6 in our first 7 games, and we've had the exact same this year as well. I feel like the SFA have it in for us. Try to get rid of our pitch, that's what it is. But no, I mean, it was a very difficult start, and we got a point up at Dens Park, which, a point we probably didn't deserve, but it was getting something on the board and something to try and build on. And then it's typical of us when we go and play the Old Firm, we always make it difficult for them. And the game against Celtic, we were defensively, we were excellent, which we hadn't been in previous weeks. We were very, very good, very difficult to break down, as you would kind of half expect us to try and be when we play either side of the Old Firm. And I think, as you mentioned, I think we were good for a result that day because we were very disciplined and and how we did off the ball more than anything. But that result didn't seem like it properly got us going. I think it was probably a few weeks out. It was probably after the October international break where we really started to turn a corner, I thought, that season. We got like back-to-back wins away at St Johnstone and Ross County, and went to Celtic Park, got a point there as well. And I think that was when we really started to kind of see what Davy was building towards. I mean, I spoke to him at the start of last season, and he described it as the most exciting group of players he's had in the door in his time at Livingston. And it's a bit of a bold statement. He'd said in August, I can guarantee we're not going to get relegated. Again, quite a bold statement to come out with, given our start to the campaign. But I think it coincided with Scott Pittman coming back to full fitness. He's a massive part of how he plays, and he's now a record appearance holder, which he broke a few weeks back.
Is that right, is it?
Yeah,
right.
He broke that record at Fir Park. So, yeah, Pitts is a massive part of how Livingston have been over going back to kind of League One when we had our back-to-back promotions. He's just about an ever-present. His stats are frightening. I think in his time at the club, he's been involved in something like 91% of our games.
Right,
it's
club legend,
so it kind of coincided with him coming back into the team, because Pitts really misses games, and the game at St Johnstone that we won 3-0, it was so evident how big a effect he has on the team. And we started to get a few results on the board, and we got a couple of really big wins in December. Beat Hibs at home, beat Dundee United away. So just before the break, we picked up a few decent results. And I think after the winter shutdown, we again picked up some really big wins. Beat Aberdeen at home, beat Hibs at Easter Road. Had another couple of very important results. I think we beat Dundee at Dens and beat Dundee United at home as well.
That's right, yeah.
We were we put ourselves right in the mix for top six, and given our start to the season, that looked near on impossible at one point. But fair play to the team, fair play to Davy, because a massive turnaround in results, and just missed out in the end on top six. It was quite agonising, 2-0 up against Motherwell with 20 minutes to go. And
that's right. God, I knew there was something about it, right? Because I've wrote down your results here, and then I said, like, so the 3-1 win for us at your place, as you said, it was a big thumbs up for us. But you had the 2 defeats straight after that. And I think that kind of knackered you. But I forgot about that Motherwell game. I'm looking right at it, and I forgot all about it. But let's be honest about it. The league was pretty poor last year, in terms of, I mean, like Aberdeen were hopeless, Hibs were hopeless. You had all these great plans, and so I bet he was frustrating, because all you needed was that just to get in, I mean, and it wasn't because you lost out to Ross County, God's sake, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective, like Dundee United finished 4th. We took 7 points in 3 games off them. Didn't lose to Ross County during the season. Motherwell we had a stinking record against, and that kind of bit us in the end. It was more the fact it was almost quite funny in a way, because Ricky Lamy, who scored, an ex-Livvy player, and one of the boys who used to do our podcast had described Ricky Lamy as a bottom half Premiership player in an article that he did when he was moving to Motherwell. So Ricky Lamy certainly got the last laugh on that one when he finished in the top half. But when you look at Motherwell's performance in Europe, you sit and go, that was our tie to fuck up.
That was
Sligo. So
we couldn't have done as bad as that. It's interesting. I'll tell you what I want to kind of touch on just for a couple of seconds before we move on. Was you were talking about the incomings, right? I remember speaking to you last year, and we were talking about the incomings, and it's a very common practice, certainly in the lower half of Scottish football and the top league. I mean, there's actually clubs flinging 2-year deals and all, but in general, as you know, 1-year deals with the hope somebody clicks and they'll maybe sign an extension and stuff like that. However, I have noticed your squad, a load of the guys who have kind of turned up this year are all guys that you got last year. Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought that was interesting, that these guys had maybe took a year to settle. They've kind of got into it, and they're looking like important players for you now. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think said this at the start of this season again. We had Davey back on the podcast, probably
which is
tail end of
brilliant.
July.
I think that's cool, man. Really good.
Had him on at the tail end of July, and that was a big thing that he spoke about was continuity this season. That we have a lot. If you look at our starting 11 on a regular basis last year, I'd say the only players we've really lost are Alan Forrest and Odin Bailey. Were probably the two regulars that played week on week.
And you knew Forrest would go in early doors, didn't you?
Yeah. Whilst this year, you're probably talking nine of our first 11 are probably there from last year. So
last season, huge.
And we've added players into the squad as well. But yeah, I think that's massive for us because it's allowed us to hit the ground running. I think a little bit more this year compared to last season. We had a very, albeit granted, we finished in the bottom half last year, but as I've said it on the podcast before, if we finish 10th and above, that's a successful campaign.
Well, just to clarify that, right? So you finished the season with 3 wins and 3 draws as you finished in the bottom half. So you weren't really in the midden, even though you were in the midden, if that makes sense. So in the end up, from your 38 matches, you had 13 wins, 10 draws, 15 defeats, 41 goals scored, 46 conceded, goal difference of -5, 49 points on board, finishing 7th place. Now, the amazing Scottish split, you finished in 7th place, 8 points more than 6th place Ross County and 4 better than Hibs in 8th. In the Scottish Cup, a 1-0 home win over Ross County on the 22nd of January, set up an away tie to Hearts in February, but after a 0-0 draw, Hearts edged out Livvy, this time with a 4-3 penalty win themselves, and that was the Cup's done for the season. So, in summary, what was your thoughts of the season? I mean, is it just another stepping stone to, like you're talking about, a wee bit of consistency?
As I say, like every season we finish 10th and above is success. I know it's really boring, it might sound negative, but when you look at our playing budget in comparison to the rest of the division, it's the realistic aim every year. And again, speaking to the manager, he talks about it. Yes, that's the end goal, is to be there. Do we think we can do better than that? Of course we do. We think we can push. We think we've got players in the building that can push us higher up the league. I mean, if you look at on paper, or granted we finished 7th, but I think it's the second most wins we've ever had in the top flight since our season where we finished 3rd. It's our second best points tally since we finished 3rd in the top flight in 2002. So it was a very good campaign in the end. Just I think we almost left it a little too late for going for top 6, and I think it could have. The campaign has a little bit of that. What could have been had we held on against Motherwell, I have no doubts that we would have qualified for Europe. It would have only been the second time in our history we managed that, and it would have been one of the best campaigns in history. So I think it's tinged with a little bit of regret, but I think it was a very good campaign given the difficulties we had in the pre-season and the start of the campaign. I think in the end it was a good season for us, and as I mentioned, we've got vast majority of the same group of players, so it's allowed us to hit the ground running so far this year, and hopefully that helps us going through the season as well.
I thought it's a fair comment. When you put it into context, I did totally forget about that Motherwell game because I knew there was some.
Trust me, I've tried to forget as well, Scott.
Sorry, mate, sorry. So as per when I do this, I'm going to take a big deep breath, right? So I'm going to go through the ins and outs, right? So this season, what we've got, so Martin Bartley, like you say, Martin Bartley and Gary Madeley both retired. Bartley's now assistant manager at Martindale, and Liam Fox, who left the club after Liam, should I say. Madeley himself is now the goalkeeping coach of the club also, which is pretty cool. Keegan Jacobs left for Arbroath. Jack McMillan signed for Partick. Carlo Pignatiello.
Well played.
Gavin Riley, he went to Queen of the South. Craig Sibbald to Dundee United because he was the best defender, the best player in the league for a week and a half, I think it was. Matic Poplatnik also departed and is yet to find a club. Alan Forrest, like we said, he saw his contract signed for Hearts after agreeing a pre-contract, and they all left him freeze. 21-year-old US keeper Brian Schwack and 22-year-old Irish winger Jake Kabia both signed for Morton and Loan. Jack Hamilton went to Hartlepool loan. Harrison Clark left on loan for Stirling Albion. Whilst number one, Max Stryjek signed for Wycombe Wanderers for an undisclosed fee. We'll come to that in a minute. I reckon that would have been a big blow after speaking to you last season. So incomings, we've got Scott Bitsendu was picked up from Belgian club Liers. Congolese international midfielder. The 26-year-old is 6'4". Fuck's sake. 24-year-old defender Jamie Brandon was signed from Hearts. Philip Kankar, another Aussie in Scottish football, as a 21-year-old defender was picked up from Western Sydney Wanderers. Journeyman striker Ismail Kongalves was picked up from Bangladesh side Sheikh Russell. He previously dispelled Scotland with Hearts in 2017 when he scored 15 goals in 42 games for the Jambos. Dylan Bahambaula, a 27-year-old French midfielder, was picked up from Oldham, another Congolese international. Shamal George, a 24-year-old English keeper, was signed from Colchester United, and the aforementioned Jack Hamilton had been picked up from Morton before his own loan spell away. All players were signed from free transfers, aside from George, where an undisclosed fee was paid out. Right, go for it.
So the big one, as you kind of mentioned, is probably the goalkeeper situation. I think for those who don't watch Livvy on a regular basis, they probably have the opinion that seeing Max Stryjek move on as being a big surprise.
Yeah.
When you're watching them every week, I've said it on the podcast, the best way I can describe Max last season is put it in golf terms, and he was probably level par.
Right, okay.
I think he had some tremendous displays, and when he was on it, again, the gaffers kind of touched on it, he's arguably one of the top 4 or 5 keepers in the league. But I think there was a lot of mistakes last year that, for me, your number one goalkeeper shouldn't be making as many mistakes as he was making throughout the season. There's a few that he kind of, I mean, one that was glaring at the start of the season was against Aberdeen, 94th minute. He's chucked one in his net, for example. So I feel Max there was too many mistakes in his game. I thought we've not had a consistent number one since probably Liam Kelly on our first season up. And I don't believe, from what I've been told by the manager and stuff like that, Max was kind of living his best life off the park either, which at our place that just doesn't go down well. And I think we signed Shamal George from Colchester. We paid, I think, something like 87 grand for him, which is the second highest fee we've ever paid for a player. Who
would be top?
Wes Hoolahan.
Wes
Hoolahan back in the day.
Good player, man.
But yeah, so Shamal signed from Colchester. I think his stats, he had, for a keeper under 25, I think he had some of the best shot stopping stats in Europe, which, he comes with a decent pedigree. He came through Liverpool's academy and he got Colchester's Player of the Year last year in League Two, and he's some size as well. He's 6'7", absolute monster between the sticks. And so far so good. There's a couple of goals he could have maybe done better with, but I wouldn't say they were glaring mistakes. But he's a young goalkeeper, and I'm sure he'll come good. It was a novelty. We announced the signing on the pitch. Livvy never do that.
We've done it once, and it never really went well for us. We done the flashing lights for Bio. Hopefully he does better.
But yeah, it was Shamal George is probably the biggest one because he's come in and he's starting every week. So he's the big one that's come in. But Sindhu, I've only seen bits and pieces of him. He's a holding midfielder, big physical presence, and there's a bit of a theme with some of Davies signings this summer. Despite the popular belief we are big and physical and we're really good at set plays, the last couple of seasons we've had some of the worst stats for defending set pieces and scoring from set pieces.
Right, okay.
And I think a big chunk of that is down to the fact we've got a midfield of Omiyonga, Holt and Pittman, who are all about 5'7", 5'8" tops. They're not big and physical like the mantra would go in Scottish football talking about it. So Davy mentioned he was looking to add a bit more height and physicality for that, which he has done. Like Bahambula's 6'2", Gonsalves is a wee bit more physical as well. Boy Guthrie that we've just signed
I missed him. Who was he?
Curtis Guthrie. So he's signed. Well, he's come from a club in India, but he's had a handful of clubs down south like Bradford, Colchester, Accrington Stanley, I think as well. He was at for a while. So he's again 6'4" centre forward. Again, adding a little bit more height. And we signed Stephen Kelly on deadline day from Rangers, midfielder as well. That was a very recent one, but yeah, I think most of the signings we've only seen kind of flashes of them so far. Because again, as I mentioned, we've had very much a settled team from the tail end of last season. So we've only seen them in kind of fits and starts. But obviously George is the big one. I think Bahan Buller's showing some good potential, really good on the ball, really tricky, close controls, very good. So I think as the season progresses, he'll probably feature a bit more. He's looked quite exciting to watch. Ismail Goncalves is a bit more of a known one for Scottish football fans. He had a spell at St Mirren and Hearts. Albeit I think he's enjoyed his months off. He was carrying a little bit of weight.
Is that right? Aye.
2 seasons. So again, that's not going to go down well with Davy. But to be fair to him, he's started the last couple of games and he's dropped a considerable amount of weight and's looked a bit sharper. So again, I think as the season goes on, he'll offer us a little bit more as well. So yeah, the signings have. It's difficult to say how they'll settle in because as I say, we've only seen them in little bursts here and there, just because the team has been so settled.
But it's really interesting though what you spoke about, because of that settled team, that he actually went out and purposely looked for positional players rather than an agent phoned them up and going, I've got this guy, which I dare say you must have seen a million of these guys, do you know what I mean? This guy appears at the door, plays a game, then the next season he disappears down the road again. So I suppose it's good that he's kind of actually going out and finding guys that are fitting into what the team needs. So we come to the current squad, right? And it looks like you've actually got a pretty decent sized squad. So I'm going to touch on the headline guys and out with the loan guys anyway. So obviously Joe Nouble, this is a guy who you signed 2 years ago, I think it was, and he previously hadn't scored a goal for the club. Had a loan at Arbroath last season, and looks like a fucking killer this season. It looks amazing.
Aye, Joe signed last summer. He was kind of one of the players that came in last summer, and Davy wanted to try and get him up to speed, so he went to Arbroath. I think we have quite a good relationship with Arbroath. There's been a few players that have gone between the clubs in recent seasons, and Joe went up there and was absolutely ripping it up in the Championship, playing out wide. Came back to us in January and kind of settled in very, very quickly. Really big guy, but he's the cliche phrase, good touch for a big guy. He's close control is brilliant. He's near on impossible to play against at times because he's so big. So if you try and wrestle him, he's just going to spin you. He's going to roll you. If you try and stand off him, he's a lot quicker than you would expect him to be. And as I say, his close control is unbelievable at times. So he's just going to bulldoze past you. He is so difficult to play against, and I think his best position's out wide, either on the left or right hand side. He's played predominantly as a 9 so far this season for us because Anderson's been struggling with a couple of niggly injuries. So he had a very good start in terms of scoring against Rangers, but he absolutely bullied Rangers that day. I think the Rangers players were taking it in turns to try and clean him out because they all ended up with a yellow card. Their back four trying to foul him. Suter, I don't think's featured since. I think he's given him that. I think he's given him that big a run around that day. So Joe, and then against Hibs as well, he was unreal against Hibs and again scored there. So he's had last few games he's not been as influential. I think teams have now kind of almost doubled up on him playing as the 9, a centre half almost going in front of him, the other going behind, so he can't win the ball cleanly and bring it down. But the last couple of games he's moved out wide again, and again he's dragging defenders out to him. I think that's the biggest attribute to his game, is because of his size, you get 2 or 3 players going to try and get the ball off him, and he just opens up space for other players. He just folk just drift towards him because because he's so physical, so difficult to get off the ball, and he's certainly proved to be a big fan's favourite since coming back to the club.
Every time we speak, I always bring his guy's name up, and considering he was a current one for a while, Jason Holt, I just think's a very, very good Scottish Premiership player. I mean, I think every time I watch him for years, I mean, there'll be the odd game where he kind of sell it a little better, but I always think he's an impressive player. And I don't know, is he still as an important player?
Holty got our Players Player of the Year last year, and
Right.
I was at our Player of the Year awards, and had Holty not got an award, I would have rioted. He was outstanding for us last season, utterly outstanding. But he does the ugly stuff. So if you're not keeping an eye on him in games, he might go under the radar. He might not have great stats in terms of assists or goals or anything like that, but in terms of like his ball recoveries and interceptions and things like that, I think he was probably one of the highest in the league, I would say, last year. He'd played every minute of every game in the league up until the last 2 games of the season. He came off with 10 minutes to go against St Mirren, I think, because he had a yellow, and I think if he got another yellow, he would have been suspended. So those are the only 2 games he didn't kind of feature a full game for. But Jason Holt's been remarkable. I think he'll be a player that Davy's looking to tie down on a longer deal because he's out of contract at the end of the season. So, yeah, I think that'll be one that we'll be looking to tie down. But yeah, Holty's been.
I think that kind of comes with the 0-0 games and the defeats over the years that you do notice the kind of guys, especially in stinking games, you're like, that wee Bam's in front of everyone, man. I mean, one of them. Right, so this guy next is somebody who I'll be honest and say I didn't really know much about, but he's took my eye since I watched the highlights. So Christian Montano, he was heavily pursued by all accounts and signed last summer for Port Vale. And like we said, he's another guy that looks like he's settled and he's now showing his worth.
Yeah, Christian had a difficult season last year. I think he was one of the players I mentioned. I think had COVID when he first came. And Davy's talked about this a lot with the guys that come from the EFL, sort of League 1, League 2. They barely train because of the number of games that they play. They're playing almost Saturday, Tuesday all the time. So they don't do a lot in terms of conditioning work or anything like that. So he says the guys that come up here often struggle for quite a period.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because he says they don't do the same. They don't do the same sort of conditioning work because they're just travelling all the time. They probably just do recovery sessions and things like that. So Davy had said that about Christian last year. I think he only started 7 games, and he predominantly played further forward, kind of as a winger. But this season, partly because James Penrice has been struggling with injuries since the start of the season, he had been a nailed-on left back. Christian's moved to left back, where he's played quite a few games down south during his career, and he's been sensational since going to left back. He just got our Player of the Month there, scored the winner at the weekend against Hearts, scored the winner against Dundee United at Tannadice early in the season, and he looks like a completely different player at left back. The best way I could describe him last year, you could tell there's a player there, but he would get into the final third and you never thought he was going to create something. Whilst when he's playing at left back, he's great at driving from deep. When he gets up ahead of steam, when he's dribbling with the ball, he's quite difficult to stop. And I think he's been more effective at doing that from left back. But he's probably caught a lot of our fans off guard because I think Davies touched on it about him as well. He, tongue in cheek at the weekend, said that he thinks Christian's twin brothers came during the summer because he's a totally different player. But I think if you asked a lot of our fans in the summer, he's probably a player you wouldn't have been that fussed about moving on. Whilst he's fair play to him because he's proved everyone wrong, probably the manager as well so far this season. And
I think as fans, we all like that, don't we? We all like guys who that you maybe wrote off, but they've showed their determination and they come in, prove you're right.
Yeah, as I say, he's been fantastic. And James Penrice, he's a local lad. He was part of the team that got promoted to the Premiership as well for 6 months of it, and young player, local lad, you're always wanting them to do well, and he did very well last season at left back, and he's purely probably he's going to struggle to get back in now because Christian's form's been so good, and I would argue Christian's been our best player so far this season, which is a big turn up given, as I mentioned, we were probably looking at him being a player that might move on in the summer. So yeah, it's fair play to him because he's been sensational.
Okay, last one that I've picked to, because we spoke about Pittman earlier on, is the opposite side, Nicky Devlin. I think that's more to do with me kind of just knowing who Nicky Devlin is, isn't it? I mean, he was kind of on the cusp of the Scotland squad and stuff like that and being a good player. So Nicky Devlin, another important player, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, Nicky's the captain, isn't he? And again, might be slightly biased because we sponsor Nicky on the podcast. He's a top guy. Top guy is our Nicholas. But no, he's been fantastic as well since signing for the club. Really nice guy as well off the park. Got a lot of time for him as a guy in general. But yeah, he's so good at overlapping and bursting forward. He's lightning quick as well at times. I think Nicky last year was probably asked to be a bit more restrained in terms of going forward. The season before he pretty much swept up all the Player of the Year awards, but
right.
I think defensively he got caught out at times because he is that type of fullback that likes to get forward where possible. And I think because of our change in shape last year, we're going to a 4-3-3. I think he was probably asked to be a little bit more restrained in terms of going forward. And I would argue it's improved him as a player as well. I think he's more defensively sound since we've moved to this shape, and he still gets forward. Don't get me wrong, he'll still love a little overlap and a wee burst up the right wing, but I think he has improved in general as a result of that. There's a possibility he might move into a back three, which we'll obviously get on to how we predict we'll play at the weekend. There's a possibility he might do that in terms of our shape, but yeah, Nicky's fantastic, and again, he'll be another one that I think Davy's looking to probably tie down a bit longer term.
That's good, aye. So, who else? I mean, who am I missing? Who else have been the standouts? And as always, is there any young guys come into the squad that maybe you can see shooting for the stars?
In terms of young players, it's quite difficult because I think Davy's loaned most of them out.
Right.
And the likes of Jack Hamilton, Jace Caballa's gone out to Morton, Brian Schraite, goalkeeper's gone out to Morton as well. So I think the vast majority of young players that are probably on the fringes of the squad are getting first team experience elsewhere. We've only just started our academy again, just at the start of the year. So we're kind of.
What was the script there? I didn't know. Had you kind of banned it during COVID, or was it before that or something?
It was when we got promoted to the Premiership. I think the way we saw it was, I mind speaking to John Ward about it, and we hadn't really produced a player that had made an impact on the first team in a number of years from the academy, and it was costing us a substantial amount of money. And I think the way they looked at it was we could probably pay 2 players that are going to make an impact on the first team immediately, and for us staying in the Premiership was crucial. So I think we'd made the difficult decision to do away with the academy, because I know everyone wants to see young players from one of their own kind of come through, and we've had some high profile ones come through our academy in the likes of Snodgrass, Dorrans, Griffiths as well over the years. So it was probably a very difficult decision, but I think in terms of getting our UEFA licence, it's something that's mandatory. So the club's made a kind of conscious effort to do a lot of stuff off the park in terms of making the club feasible for UEFA, because I think there was a point where we wouldn't have been able to play in European football because we didn't meet the criteria being a top flight club.
Right, okay. So jeez, the academy you don't know, man.
I know, it's frightening, eh? But we started the academy in January, did open trials and things like that, and we had our B team playing in the SPFL trophy. They got a fantastic result, beat Bonnyrigg on penalties. Bonnyrigg, who have started League 2 fantastically this year, won the Lowland League, and then got knocked out by Celtic over at Airdrie. But again, you look at Celtic's B team, they're playing Lowland League football, men's football every week just now. So it was by no means shameful losing to what was a very, very good Celtic side and very kind of experienced for the age that they are. playing Lowland League football every week. So it'll be a few years, I think, before we kind of see anything come of the academy. But as a fan, it's fantastic to see that.
Yeah.
But in terms of players in the first team, Omiyonga, Stefan Omiyonga is another very much in the mould of a Pittman or Holt. He's a little buzz bomb in the middle of the park.
Okay.
Games kind of built around 50-50s, tackles, interceptions, kind of regaining possession of the ball, but he's very good on the ball as well.
It's funny you mentioned that about how I'll be sitting to Livingston, big physical team and all that, and then you actually sit down and think about them. You think about the wee snotters in the middle of the park, these TV guys that are fucking running like that. It's just funny then, but you go with the perceived logic, and then funny.
That's the thing. We're so used to it now. We get the hammer throwers tag, and then you actually go and look and research our team. It's not that big. But we Stefan.
Well, always they tell you, but us Celtic fans were awfully ignorant to other teams.
But we Stefan's a massive fan's favourite as well. He's just one of those players you can't help but have a bit of affection for. He plays the game with a smile on his face. He's just puts in kind of 110% effort every week and does the ugly side of the game really well. And again, Stefan's another one that's out of contract at the end of the season.
Right.
I don't think he's on a great deal. I think he took a substantial dip in wages when he signed, when he came over from Italy. I think a lot of it was down to the fact he knew Marvin Bartley very well, and I think he enjoyed his time in Edinburgh when he was at Hibs as well. So I think that played a big part in him coming to the football club. But he'll be another one that I think Davey will look to try and tie down if possible. But he's another one that's has played a massive part over the last year.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's go to the games. So this season, as per, the season started with the League Cup group stages. A 3-2 away win over Albion Rovers was followed up by a home defeat by Championship side Inverness. Another away win over Cove Rangers was followed by a good 2-0 win over Celtic Hearts at home to finish the group. Those results saw Livvy finish in second place, 2 points behind group winners Inverness, with 9 points from 4 games, 8 goals scored, 5 conceded. This set up a home tie against Struggle Dundee United, but a 2-1 reversal saw Livvy dip out the cup early doors. Disappointing, I would say.
Yeah, the League Cup was... I think we had quite a tough League Cup group. If you look at it on paper, Celtic Hearts were League 2 champions, Cove were League 1 champions, Inverness had got to the final of the Premiership playoff. So I think it was probably as tough a draw as we could have got in the League Cup. Albion Rovers, we were 3-0 up, absolutely coasting, conceded 2 really sloppy goals from set plays. So that kind of took the shine off what was a very comfortable performance. The Inverness game, we were 1-0 down, then Matt Stryett got sent off for just about knocking somebody's head off when he came out and kneed the boy in the head for a ball over the top, and then Inverness scored on the break to go 2-up. We scored with about 5 minutes to go, and then had a penalty in the last minute to equalise and take it to penalties, and we missed it. So, and then Cove, we got a man sent off after 20 minutes. Gonsalves got sent off after 20 minutes. We're 1-0 down at half time, so we actually did well to win that game in the end. And I think a few results went in our favour elsewhere in the other groups when we beat Celtic. So I think the Inverness game kind of takes the shine off it, because if you've been there and watched the game, we could have came away with a result and won on penalties and then got the bonus point and finished top our group. So, just the way the game kind of materialised. So, and I think probably still getting up to speed. We had a couple of pre-season games. We went out to Spain pre-season, and again, having spoke to the gaffer, he talked about how they didn't probably get I think they wanted 2 or 3 games whilst they were out there. They only got 1 against a local select side, so it wasn't ideal. I think he said they were probably coming into the League Cup groups probably a couple of games off the pace, and I think that probably showed in the opening couple of games. In terms of our start to the league, I mean, I mentioned this to you earlier, I think we've had 5 of the top 6 in our first 7 games in the league this season. Rangers on the opening day, that's 3 times in the last 5 seasons. We've had one of the Old Firm on open day, including twice Flag Day. So I swear to God the SFA have it in for us, but we certainly didn't disgrace ourselves against Rangers and 1-0 up, and I thought we were excellent and conceded 2 quick-fire goals with kind of 20-15 minutes to go. So we gave a very good...
You actually had a decent chance, did you know, at 1-0? I'm pretty certain, aye.
Yeah, Newbley had a really good chance where he probably should take a shot on, or he's
that's
got
right,
another option
that's
to roll
exactly
it to
right,
the back post, and that's to go, as you say, 2-0 up, totally different game at that point. And we managed to pick up our first one up at Tannadice. We were excellent up at Tannadice for about an hour, 70 minutes. Penned in probably the last 20, but Dundee United's Twitter described it as a dominant second half, which was anything far from it. And beat Hibs as well. Again, probably 70 minutes of that game, we were excellent. Hibs had a kind of barrage after half time where they managed to get their equaliser, but I think we deserved to win that game in the end based on the kind of chances created. And we then had a few kind of poorer performances. Motherwell, we had a shocking penalty decision go against us for handball, which...
it was in my notes.
Utterly baffling how they could give a handball for that. We didn't. Don't get me wrong. We were very poor that day, but that game had 0-0 written all over it. And
that game as well.
Yeah, and then the Aberdeen game. Again, the scoreline would suggest that we got battered for large spells of the game, but see, for 40 minutes, we absolutely bossed Aberdeen, and then calamitous red card and penalty, and it's that double jeopardy, isn't it? Man sent off, go 1-0 down 5 minutes before half time, and second half we capitulated. It wasn't good enough, and it was a terrible away day all in for us because my pal got shot on by a seagull in the away end, and another Livvy fan spewed in my hoodie that was sitting on the back of a seat. So yeah, it was a pretty terrible away day all in, Scott.
I wasn't expecting that. Very good.
The spew was even worse because there was about 100 Livvy fans in that away end at Pittodrie, and he turned round to me and said, "Where was I meant to go?" I was like, I mean, look at the empty seats everywhere. Oh God, but yeah, so not a good day all in, and then the cup defeat during the week to Dundee United. I tell you what, Jack Ross must have been the angriest man in Scotland watching that first half from Dundee United, because had they played anything like that for him in some of those league games, there's not a chance he'd be sacked. So it just shows you that those players had completely down tools for Jack Ross. And obviously you guys had give them a bit of a hiding at Tannadice, but second half of that game we were a lot better, but we were 2-0 down and we're chasing the game. It was always going to be very difficult. And the game against Hearts at the weekend, again, we first 20 minutes maybe, Hearts were probably the better side, and Davies made a bit of a tactical tweak during the game, and it's proved very effective because, again, I think we bossed Hearts for probably 70 minutes of that game, and we arguably should have probably won the game more comfortably if it wasn't for Craig Gordon, who was proved our nemesis a couple of times last season when we played them as well. So yeah, I think it's been a very solid start to the season. I think if you'd asked us 9 points from our opening 6 in the league, I think any Livvy fan would have probably bitten your hand off for that. So, and I think after we play Celtic, we've got a run of games where you would probably be targeting points in, like Kilmarnock, Ross County, St Johnstone, and I think St Mirren in our 4 games after that. So that'll be games we'll be looking to pick up points, and hopefully it could be a very good kind of first third of the season for us.
It's interesting, the highlights, because the highlights basically are 5 minutes and they tell you nothing. That's every time I'll sit with somebody like yourself, you, and I always make the apology for what I've seen. I watched the Rangers game because that was the opening day of the season, but I've watched the highlights, and highlights tell me, like I say, tell me nothing, because that Hibs highlight, the Hearts highlights, look like you guys deserve to win about 14-0. Hearts not anywhere near it. But it's interesting. I noticed that you are ceding a lot of possession to teams, but you look a lot more dangerous on the counter than I can remember anyway. I mean, you look like a decent bit of pace in the team, and as you say, with the big Newbley, when he's on form, coming in for the wide positions, he just looks like I could do you damage. I mean, look, and that's what I just kind of from obviously the Motherwell game, he's looked pretty damn poor, and then the Aberdeen game, exactly like you said, a capitulation after a stupid penalty mistake. So with that in mind, right, as you say, right, just to kind of, so you guys currently sit in 7th place, 3 wins, 3 defeats, 5 goals scored, 9 conceded, albeit 5 against Aberdeen. So you've got a goal difference of -4, 9 points on the board, level in 6th place with St Mirren, 1 ahead of Hibs and 8. So decent start, as you say. Now, formation-wise, you said he's changed up last season. Using transfer marked as I do, he's have kind of flung out a few different formations this season. You've kind of went with the 4-3-3 with 2 holding midfielders, 4-3-3, 2 attacking midfielders, then the 4-3-2-1 or the 4-2-3-1. So whilst it's not a massive change, it seems like, is it personnel that's changing, or is it just kind of playing every game differently?
Yeah, I think the first game of the season against Rangers, we played a variation of a 4-3-3 essentially. It was a 4-3-2-1, I would say. Right. With kind of almost 2 10s in behind Nubley. And I think that was more to do with how Rangers played in terms of having 2 holding midfielders. And I think we were almost trying to have the likes of Pittman and Shinnie just sitting on top of them.
Yeah.
And we played that well in the game. Davy kind of stuck with that, went up to Tannadice, played very well, stuck with it against Hibs. Again, played very well, stuck with it. And the Motherwell game, he had the same team out. Wasn't a good performance in the end in that game. And I think he probably looked at the Aberdeen game. Again, he stuck with the same team. He's probably, I think he hummed and hawed about making changes for the Motherwell game, listening to his post-match. But I almost think it was a bit of management to go, look, guys, you were disappointing last week. Go up to Pittodrie. I'm going to put the same team out. You proved me wrong type thing. And for 40 minutes they did, because they were excellent. And, played Aberdeen off the park for 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of it where you could go, well, it kind of worked.
Kind of worked.
It kind of worked in that
5-0 defeat.
It did kind of work for that spell of the game, but obviously he made changes for the Dundee United game, and again he probably stuck with the same shape roughly. Again, kind of 2 10s almost, and albeit I think as the game wore on, he went with 2 guys who are more naturally wide players. Like say, Nubley went out into the wide area, and the boy Bahambulla came on as well, who can play out in the wide area. So we started with a 4-4-1-1 on Saturday, but I think Davy had in his head it was more to do with what Hearts were doing, because he wasn't sure in terms of their shape, whether they would play with a 3 at the back or a 4 at the back because of their injury problems. And he tweaked that during the game and moved to a more natural kind of 4-3-3 that we played last season, with Nubley out wide, James Penrice kind of filled in on the right hand side with Gonsalves through the middle, and again we were in control of the game from there on when Davy made that change. So a lot of credit has to go to him. So we've more or less stuck with the same shape. I think we tweaked it ever so slightly at the start of the season, but I think Davy couldn't justify changing it. Based on the level of the performances, and then when the performances have dipped, he's gone kind of reverted back to more naturally what we were playing last year.
All right, so here it comes in. How he's looking for this weekend then?
Terrified.
What do you think formation-wise, and how do you think he'll go for it?
I think if you look back at the 0-0 last year, I think that'll give you a pretty good indication on how we're going to set up. I said this on our podcast we recorded earlier on today, which is out now for anyone who wishes to listen to it. But I think we'll go to a back 5. I can't see us doing anything differently than that, and playing 4 in front of that, and then having Nubley as our out ball. I just think if we try and play a 4-3-3 at Celtic Park, we're going to get absolutely torn a new one the way you guys have started the season. And look, we'll get called football terrorists, we'll get called anti-football, we'll get called everything under the sun. But at the end of the day, I think with our resources and stuff like that, it's the only natural way we could go to Celtic Park and play. And at the end of the day, if you look back at that 0-0 last season, I tell you what, I don't think there was a team that would have restricted Celtic to as little chances at Celtic Park or even in general across the league season as we did. So we did our job well that day. So I think Davey will be going with probably looking back at that game, and that's where he'll get his inspiration tactically for.
Right, so a prediction?
I was being very bold in our podcast predicting another 0-0, but I don't know if I truly believe it, Scott.
I'll not push you on it then. I'll not push you on it.
It was
right.
It was last season. It was last season when we played at Celtic Park. We all predicted 3s and 4s, and we got a 0-0. And Nicky Devlin chinned us on the podcast on Twitter for being so negative. So I felt like I can't let Nicky down, and I need to be positive and say that we're going to go there and get a result. But it's like you guys have scored 25 goals in the league, conceded 1 so far. You've looked utterly relentless. I saw periods of the Old Firm game, and I said about 10 minutes in, this has got, it's going to be a carbon copy of the 3-0 in February, and it near enough was. 3-0 at half time, and you just wiped the floor with Rangers. And I mean, Rangers were very good last year, got to a Europa League final. We've not got the same players as they do, so it's very difficult.
Funny. I like you say, you done a wee bit. We'll do a wee bit of promotion later, but I always listen to your preview and your post-match. Admittedly, I do skip to the Celtic parts. You know what I mean? I don't sit and listen to the Kelly preview after it. You know what I mean? But I think you guys are 100% fair, and you're right what you're saying. I remember you were speaking to me, and you were kind of going, I don't know. That's before the 1-0 game, obviously. We'd never done the second one. But then, and I listened to your previews, and I do remember you kind of predicting doom. And then I listened to it, and you were like, what happened? Oh, brilliant, man. So I'd recommend anybody kind of gives it. So beyond that, right, so this game will come and go, and you guys' season will only be dictated by how you going against Celtic. I know that. But what do you think of the season ahead? Because each time I speak to you, you always kind of say to me you'd like that another cup run, another cup final, another trip to Hampden to go along with a decent league season. So the League Cup must have been disappointing. But I mean, ultimately, get yourself into a position midway through the table, middle of the league, get yourself a good Scottish Cup run.
Yeah, the Scottish Cup's been our Achilles heel for years. I don't know all the stats with it, but I think we've only made it past. So if we are entering at the 4th round, I think we've only made it past the 5th round like once in something like 12, 15
really?
years. It's an outrageously bad Scottish Cup record we've had for a number of years. I think the last time we got to a quarter final would have been 2005. Would have been the last time we got to a quarter final in the Scottish Cup. So our record in that's poor. So I'd love to see us rectify that and try and get to at least the last 8, if not last 4, and get a wee trip to Hampden out of it. That would be a bonus. We've typically done a lot better in the League Cup in the last few years. So that was a bit disappointing, especially because we could have had Kilmarnock in the next round, which is a winnable tie. So yeah, a bit disappointed with that. But yeah, I think a good Scottish Cup run. I'd bite your hand off for mid-table, but I think we're capable of pushing top 6, and because of the way the league's set up and the coefficient with the European places, you've got to get. If you get into top 6, you just need to be better than one team in the top 6 to get European football just now. Which, for a club of our size, getting back into European football would be an unbelievable achievement. And Davey, I know speaking to Davey a lot, that's kind of his aspiration, is to give the fans European football, which would be, as I say, nothing short of a miracle with the resources that we have. So that would be the perfect season. Would probably be getting into the top 5 in European qualification.
Good, mate. Well, I hope he's there. Because fuck Motherwell after that crap this year.
Do you want to know? It insults me so much, Motherwell's performance against Sligo, because I feel like we wouldn't have let Scottish football down the way they did in those 2 games. I just feel like we would have done better and made more of an effort in it. But You can tell it doesn't grind on me, that result.
No. It's come up a couple of times, aye. Right, Euan, once again, that's absolutely perfect, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's been very interesting. You've told me fucking a shitload once again, you've told me a shitload that I didn't know. I look forward to the game on Saturday for a few reasons. I don't want to sound like a patronising cunt, but I expect Celtic to win. I mean, I'm a bit fearful for tomorrow for myself personally. I mean, playing the European champs. I mean, it's one thing, but as I say, right. So thanks again for doing this. Social media wise, tell the world where you are. As I say, I would recommend listening to your previews and post matches. I think it's very interesting, very fair. But let the people know.
Yeah, so you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at TalkLivi on Twitter. And podcast is in all the usual spots, Spotify, Apple, also on YouTube as well. So feel free to subscribe to that if you want to listen in. But yeah, we had an interview with the gaffer earlier in the season, which I'd recommend any Scottish football fan to go and listen to, because I don't think there's many managers that tell you the content that Davy does. He's very open and honest. Probably too honest at times in terms of what he tells essentially a fan. So I'd recommend anyone to go and listen to that as well. But it'd be great if any of you tune in.
Amazing, mate. Amazing. Once again, thank you very much. My old adage, hope your season goes great after Saturday. And good luck to you, mate. Thanks again.
Thanks very much for having me on. Pleasure as always.